Holly's here.
Courtney's here.
Marcy's here.
Kyle's here.
What were the major differences and patterns of pre- and post-revolutionary trade? Before the Revolutionary War, what was going on was mercantilism.
Yeah. Well, basically, like, England made the colonies follow that, which was basically, like, the trade had to, like, help the mother colony.
I can understand where the rebellion would come in, where they're producing all these like resources,
And it's getting taken away from them. Like, they have to work so hard because so many people were dying farming that stuff and everything.
Yeah, slaves and stuff. You know, like we only survived a couple weeks or so in a sugarcane field.
Yeah, and then so they did all that work, and so many people died for what?
Right, they're making so much less money off of it because England had to get in the middle. Most of the colonies were English colonies, and it's so that even no matter where something was actually being shipped,
It had to go to England first.
right, and it had to go through England.
And didn't it have to go in an English ship, or was that later on?
Yeah, that was also.
So they had total control over the colonies' trade at that point.
What's that called? Like a monopoly?
Yeah, I think it's basically a monopoly when you have total control over a type of business.
So obviously, after the Revolutionary War, America was not trading with England.
It was totally different. But
they did follow some same trade routes, you know, from America to to Europe, but not specifically to England. More of Spain. Other European, like Spain, Portugal, France.
They didn't have to use their ships or their ports.
Right. Yeah. So the differences being literally trade routes, even.
Yeah, because they used to go like straight to Europe before they went basically anywhere, and now they were completely heading just to Africa, and the West Indies were exporting to them.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's funny is when you look at the map that's actually in this packet with the wind, with the winds on it, it makes it look like it was obviously logical for North America to be trading with England or Europe because
based on the dominant wind route, because that would have been easier for them to travel that direction.
Like I was looking at it like look how easy it would have been for like
they just had to follow the wind exactly.
After the war, it was a problem where they couldn't just take advantage of that.
So it was further part of the issues they had with independence. They had to fight the winds.
They had to fight nature,
Mother Nature,
and their mother country. Before the war, it's interesting. It's almost like a pattern of like them becoming more mature as a country on their own. Where before the war they were just going with the wind. You know what I mean? Even going with going with the tide. Where they're just going with what's going on, and
figuratively and literally.
Right, like they're just doing what England says, and then. But after
they really fought against it, like once again, literally and figuratively, because they had to work their way to Africa to send things, and then in turn to get things from the West Indies.
So they were figuring out how to, live without the mom. That's kind of like when you move out and you're like...
It's like they had to learn to be self-sufficient.
Right. It was in the Garrity that I saw that map that...
Yeah, there was a much more specific map. It was a little more straightforward.
Where it was less to Europe. 55. Yes, thank you. This is what I thought the triangular trade originally was.
Yeah.
From North America to Africa, Africa to the West Indies, and West Indies to North America.
Yeah, it was kind of a couple triangles.
Because I distinctly remember Africa giving them slaves.
Well, that's post. They cut out England.
Well, see, I remember learning about this where Africa was sending the West Indies slaves. The West Indies were sending those slaves to North America and sugar and molasses. The sugar and molasses, the North America was making rum, and rum was going to Africa.
Yeah, I remember.
And as well as wherever else they would export, but that was like the real what formed the triangle.
So the thing is, like a lot of war between, like I was actually thinking about this when I was reading the Garrity, where any kind of war like totally messes up like the entire world, and I can understand now why people,
because they all depend on each other.
Right, like North America couldn't have gotten its slaves if it wasn't getting its sugar from them and sending their rum to getting the sugar from the West Indies.
So it's like a whole cycle. They all need each other. Post-war, too, it was a lot of colonies trading within themselves, not just with Africa and the West Indies. They were trading amongst each other. Remember we read about that? And didn't it cause some conflicts, though? They had some issues with that.
And not only did it cause other countries, but colony upon colony, each plantation would have their own product that they would want to compete with.
I remember we read that it caused some problems.
Yeah, after domestic trade was being increasingly disrupted during the 1780s, as more states began to impose tariffs on goods from other states. So even after the war was over, and they weren't trading with England, they were still having issues, reinstating trade between themselves because it was so...
Wasn't it also an issue because they all had different sources of money, so they had problems converting that?
Each state had their own form of money, so that...
Oh, and the thing was, when they were all... European or British pretty much colonies, they all had like the British system of money.
Yes. So they were all unified by that, but then
I think a lot of that caused problems even into like the Civil War of America, where as British colonies, they were at least united in that. Britain is completely cut out. It becomes a problem of independence on their own. And oh, you know what I just thought of? Tobacco? Yes, okay. So it almost seems like after North America stopped trading with Europe, it benefited them in the sense that the furs was becoming a problem because the beavers had migrated away. Tobacco was hard enough to grow anyway.
Because it just kills the land.
Yeah. Right, and lumber itself they were able, once they didn't have to use English ships or British ships, they could make their own ships with their own lumber.
Freedom.
So it almost seems like with stopping the exports to England that it benefited them in that sense.
And they got more payment for their own work, you know, instead of just having to ship so much of it off into a country where
you're making more.
Yeah, and they're like reaping what they sow.
I think we've outlined them as well as possible.
Yeah.
Major differences being obviously the route changing
and
completely.
The ships and ports, which is obviously a big part of the route change.
So the pattern, I guess, is that even you can recognize where the blue and the black go together, where the West Indies and North America, they seem to be like comfortable trading with each other. Like it doesn't seem like there's ever a problem.
I haven't read about any issues.
I haven't either, but I mean, I'm sure there are because there's always issues.
Yeah, when it comes to money and trade.
So the pattern,
people.
Yes,
right. The pattern seems to be that North America is still able to export to Africa and the West Indies.
Get a lot of the things that they need.
So we covered the major differences being the trade routes.
And how each of them were, both types of trade.
And the patterns where, how it stayed the same, where they were still trading in certain areas. And I think so.
All right.
Sounds good. All right. Bye, Doobie. Bye. Bye.
Hi. Kyle's leaving.